Hey there, it's Shauna. I hope you're doing great. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for January 22nd. So this week I'm calling Speak Your Truth because this week we have a lot of aspects with the planet Mercury, and Mercury is all about speaking and communication and also listening. So I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you, and then I have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. So let's get started. The first thing that's happening this week is kind of intense. So we have Mercury conjunct Pluto towards the beginning of the week. And Mercury, again, it's how it is that we communicate. It's how, it's our capacity to share ideas with other people, to share ideas with the world. And it's also just how we process things at an intellectual level. It's how we think, basically. And Pluto is an intense planet. Pluto is about the process of death and rebirth. So Pluto symbolizes where something metaphorically needs to fall away or to die or to decompose so that something new can come in. Pluto is also related to psychology. It's related to secrets and intuition and sensing things that are going on underneath the surface, sensing energy, sensing deep emotions that are maybe unconscious, again related to psychology. And so what does this mean when these two come together? So this really means that there's something that is unconscious, Pluto, that can become conscious, Mercury. So again, it may feel a little bit intense. I would notice what kind of intuitions are coming up for you, what types of feelings are coming up for you, especially feelings that may feel vulnerable or tender or just like uncomfortable. Pluto can also denote where situations or feelings around intimacy, sexuality, shame, guilt, resentment, all of these like really intense and like deep things, these things that hit us deep inside of the heart. And so there's something here that wants to be unearthed, basically, that wants to become conscious. Mercury is about conscious thinking and just being aware of things. Around this time also, we're having the first quarter square of the moon in the sign of Taurus. And so this is really interesting to me as well, because the first quarter moon is about meeting challenge. It's about standing up for what it is that you believe in. It's about sussing out where you want to make compromises versus where you don't want to compromise. This being in the sign of Taurus, you might be like, I don't want to fucking compromise. This is what I want, and I'm sticking to it. So all of these things may come up earlier in the week. Then we have Mercury sextile Jupiter. And so this is different because Jupiter is about expanding your knowledge. It's about luck and synchronicity. Whereas Pluto earlier in the week is more about like digging deep and like unearthing something that's a little bit vulnerable. Jupiter, in contrast, is about being open to new possibilities and being open to something that can assist you as well. And so it's interesting that it's like maybe there's something that we're wrestling with earlier in the week, and then midweek there can be a sense of relief, maybe a sense of space around that, a space around feelings that have been intense. And then later in the week, Mercury, again, I told you it's Mercury week, Mercury will square Uranus. And Uranus is the planet that represents our individuality, our ability to be ourselves, and to also be a part of a community, to be a part of a tribe, and to maintain our individuality when we're in that community. Uranus can also denote where we want to break free of something, where we want to change an existing system, where we want to do things differently. Uranus definitely encourages us to do things outside of the social norms. And so I'm wondering if later in the week you may be feeling like you've processed some things and maybe you have a different perspective. Maybe you want to go about things differently, or maybe you just have a different view on a situation. And this, so this is interesting, the fact that it's a square, Mercury square Uranus, it is something that may be unavoidable to confront. So again, I would just notice like what's happening what you're thinking of as I'm speaking, what kind of situations or issues, and where is it that something needs to change a little bit? Where is it that you could do something a little bit differently? And you may not know exactly what that is. You may have an insight later in the week, or it may come even later. But the whole like overarching theme for this week, I think, is that it's important to be honest with yourself, and it's important to be open to new things. Especially earlier in the week is like really getting real with yourself. I mean, it's Mercury and Pluto are in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn's all about being real and dealing with the facts of a situation. And then there's this sense of openness and space around things later in the week. So, okay, so that being said, I have 3 tips for you to really make the most of this. Tip number 1 is to find your stability. And I mean that because this is a week where we're really thinking about things. There's a lot of intellectual stimulation going on. And so what is it that you need in order to stay stable with all of this? Because again, like all of these planets, especially Pluto earlier in the week, it can be like destabilizing, and it can kind of feel like you're not really sure what to do or what to say. And so what I want for you is to find your stability proactively. So that may look like having a clear schedule of your week. That may look like doing self-care things, exercise, making sure that like simple things like that you have your lunch packed for the next day, stuff like that, you know, like what do you need that feels soothing, that feels grounding for you this week so that you can feel more stable. Tip number 2 is to use your words. So this week it is so important. I mean, I've titled this Speak Your Truth. It's important to talk things out, to communicate, even if that's just internally with yourself, to do journaling. So important to use your words this week. So important to speak when you feel compelled to speak, to talk to a friend, talk to a mentor, talk to people that you can trust, and share your ideas. Because Mercury is so much related to communication, it's related to that giving and receiving energy too. So like talking, but then also listening at the same time. We got to do both. So that's tip number 2, to definitely use your words this week. And then I have a quote for you that I want to share before I give you tip number 3. So this quote is from Oprah. This is from her speech at the Golden Globes recently. I think announced a few weeks ago. And she is the person that we're featuring on this week's episode of the Feminine Principle podcast. So she says, "What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have." And she said this within the context of all of the women and some men, I think too, that have come forward regarding sexual abuse recently, especially in the entertainment industry. And it is so powerful. It is so powerful not just to speak your truth in what it is that's important to you, but if there's something that wasn't right, or that you felt uncomfortable about, or something that is kind of that you've had to conceal in some way. And I think that may be a subtle part of this week too, especially because we have Pluto, Pluto, Jupiter, and Uranus. Like Pluto is related to secrets and that kind of thing. And these kinds of things are delicate and they are tender, and it's not always appropriate. Like sometimes it can be more harmful to speak out, and that is speaking out in general, or sometimes it can be harmful just to share your truth with a particular audience. Sometimes there can be more pain and suffering, and so and I think that's why all of this has happened, why women have been concealing things for so long, because it didn't feel safe. And it's kind of ironic because once one person starts speaking out, once we start speaking out individually about one thing, then things kind of open up and then it becomes safe. And so I think that's just like an interesting meditation for this week too, is where something may feel unsafe to say or to talk about. But is it really, like, you know, is it really unsafe or is it not? And like all of these different, I think that's a very, you know, we could talk philosophical about that for a long time. But I think that the root of this week is that it's important to talk about things, and it's important to be honest with yourself. It's important to be honest with others, and to find the right platform, to find the right medium, to find the right people that you can speak to, that you can speak your truth to. And then tip number 3, lastly, is to be flexible. So I say that this week because we do have Uranus here in the mix, and so whenever Uranus is involved, things may not turn out the way that we think they will. So it's important to be flexible, to be open, and you may be surprised at what comes in for you. So that is your weekly horoscope, your weekly forecast. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with a friend, because I like to get these messages out to as many people as possible. And if you want to go deeper into this astrology, much more than I can on this video, you can listen to the Feminine Principle podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. That's the podcast that I co-host with my friend Mel of Energetic Principles. And I'll have a link down below. You can listen on iTunes, Podbean, or even YouTube. And yeah, that's all for this week. If you want to follow me more, you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook. I'll have links down below. You can find me on Neo-Feminine Astrology on Instagram. Sending you lots of love, wishing you an amazing week, and I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.